Okay, it looks like we're at the hour. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Micro Focus Secure Messaging Gateway webinar. My name is Q Mangus. I'm the Product Marketing Manager here at Micro Focus for Secure Messaging Gateway. I'm joined today by Ben Horde. He's the Operations Manager here at Micro Focus. Ben's going to be demonstrating Secure Messaging Gateway for all of us. I'd just like to start off by mentioning that we are really excited to announce that GWAVA 7 is now Secure Messaging Gateway. And why this is exciting is this change shows that Micro Focus is committed to this security solution, and it also shows Micro Focus's commitment to the collaboration market as a whole. I'd like to thank everyone once again for being here and hope you can benefit from this information. One thing to remember is this webinar is being recorded, so if you want to review it or share it with others, you'll be receiving an email shortly after the webinar with a link to the recording and so that you can review it. Also, if you do have any questions, feel free to put those through in the question panel there on the GoToWebinar, and we will field those questions at the end. Just as a review, today we're going to be talking about Secure Messaging Gateway. This solution provides inbound and outbound protection for your company's enterprise network and messaging system. It includes zero-hour antivirus, anti-spam, cybercrime protection, DDoS protection, and porn blocking with built-in image analysis. Some other things too that it uses the latest technology to ensure that your system and network is free of viruses, malware, and spam. It also monitors network traffic to prevent those pornographic images, prevents from cybercrime. And there's also, and we'll be talking about a lot of this stuff, there's an email content scanner, perimeter defense scanning, and there's support for multiple email systems. Some things that are new in Secure Messaging Gateway is there's an upgrade path now. If you are a previous GWAVA customer and you're on a version of GWAVA 6 dot whatever, 6x, and you want to migrate to Secure Messaging Gateway, there is a path for that. There's now support for Dkim Verification. Also, the system's going to update on the last Thursday of each month with Secure Messaging Gateway. So those system updates come monthly. And of course, the virus and spam databases are updated constantly, providing you that zero-hour protection. And then, of course, there's Micro Focus branding as well, and you'll see that today. One other thing I wanted to make mention of, and we recently announced this at our event last week, which was Tech Connect, Micro Focus Tech Connect, which was formerly GuavaCon. And this, we're really excited to announce this. Basically, what we have done is we have a new offering from Micro Focus called Enterprise Messaging, and Secure Messaging Gateway is part of that new product offering. And Enterprise Messaging, what it is it's a complete collaboration solution that provides your organization with email, calendaring, scheduling, instant messaging, chat-based teamwork, security, archiving, backup, and disaster recovery. That's all in one solution. So really what this is, it's the culmination of the acquisition of GWAVA by Micro Focus is now we have one solution where you can have all email, the archiving solutions, security, disaster recovery, and that chat-based teamwork in one solution. So if you're interested in that solution, please reach out to us. There will be other information coming out. There will be a webinar about that as well. But I just want to make mention that Secure Messaging Gateway is part of that solution set. So what we're going to get to now is there's a number of questions about Secure Messaging Gateway, and I want to ask those to Ben, and he's going to show us how it works in Secure Messaging Gateway. And of course, if you have any questions, as I stated, feel free to put those through on the question tab, and we can answer those as well if there's anything that we don't get to that you may have questions about. So we'll go ahead and get started. Let me pass it over to Ben, and we'll ask him some questions here. So I'm going to make him the presenter. The first question I have really is, I wanted to talk about multi-system support. Ben, could you talk and possibly show us how Secure Messaging Gateway protects different email systems?
Yeah, so with the Secure Messaging Gateway, the first interface that we did was the SMTP interface. And if you're familiar at all with GWAVA 6, that was the main interface that we were really advocating as the best interface to use for for your email protection. So what I'll do is I'm going to log in here and show you that you can configure Secure Messaging Gateway to talk to any SMTP server that's out there, whether it's Exchange, Office 365, Gmail, GroupWise, Lotus Notes, Postfix, doesn't matter what it is, as long as it talks to the SMTP protocol. And so it's as simple as coming in here, managing your domains or adding a new one. And then down in this SMTP host section, you just tell Secure Messaging Gateway, where do I need to route my email traffic? So the same way that if you're familiar with GWAVA 6 that you did it in GWAVA 6, this is where we do it with Secure Messaging Gateway. And again, it doesn't matter what email platform is behind Secure Messaging Gateway, as long as it's talking the SMTP protocol, that's, we can work with that email system. One important note to bring up here is that with GroupWise 18, GroupWise obviously had a lot of different interfaces in the GWAVA 6 world, whether it be the MTA, POA, WebAccess, the GroupWise Mobility Service. With GroupWise 18, we are going to be supporting all of those interfaces natively into the Secure Messaging Gateway. So it is coming with GroupWise 18.
Great. Yeah, good to see that that support is going to be in for GroupWise 18 on Secure Messaging Gateway. So thank you for that. Let's talk about a little bit about antivirus and anti-spam protection. Can you talk about how that works in Secure Messaging Gateway and kind of give us some examples of how you would set that up?
Yeah, so with Secure Messaging Gateway, the antivirus engine and spam engine, very similar to the way it was done in the 6 world. Setting it up is quite simple. What you would have to do is create policies within Secure Messaging Gateway to say, if we match on this qualification, say if it's inbound mail, we want to make sure we're scanning it. So you have two options with policies. You can create a new policy or do the wizard option. We always like the wizard option because it sets up more than just, a default policy. It kind of guides you the way that we think you should go. So with the wizard, you can specify the direction. You choose whether or not you want to, do anti-spam, antivirus. This section is for attachment types. So with fingerprinting and the name of the attachment. Do you want to enable quarantine? The message tracker, I know this was a big request before. We want to make sure that get this in. So message tracker, we want to make sure that as messages are flowing in and out through the policies, that we have message tracker records so you can go through and search for those. And at the end here, we have a summary that say, here's everything we're going to do. We're going to hit continue. It's going to install a policy and gives you a default name. And if you click on the row, you can see exactly everything that we're matching on. Now this doesn't have anything to do with what we scan in a message. This just says if the metadata matches any of these qualifications, this is the policy that we're going to use. And within an organization or within what you do, you can always have multiple policies, and you can do add with wizard again, or you can do a manual policy as you wish, and then you specify the qualifications manually. One important note to point out here is with the policy matching, it is a top-down hierarchy. So as we traverse the list, we're going to try the first policy. If we find a qualification that matches, this is the policy that we use, and we don't try any of the other policies. So what you want to do is make sure that if you set this up with multiple policies, that those fine-tuned policies that are specific to some qualification, they are at the top of the list and not the bottom. But at the bottom, you want to make sure that you have a broad policy that will match everything, just so you're protected in case all the other policies don't have a match. So after you define a policy, what you have to do is you come down to the policy scan configuration and you actually configure that policy. Now by default, with that default one that we did with the wizard, it's called the mail filter policy. We set up a policy that's default as to what we think is going to be the best case policy that most of you guys will use or set up within a system. You can see it's different than, if you're familiar with GWAVA 6, it's very different than what you're used to there, but it's much more powerful in the customization that you can do. You can have certain exceptions that apply to multiple different filters or new custom filters and services. But as we pointed out here, so antivirus and anti-spam, by using a default policy or the wizard policy, you can see that we have an antivirus filter. The filters are the tests that we actually do. So you can see you have an antivirus filter and a 0-hour virus filter. And these filters are associated with this virus filter group, and that group is also linked to the message block service. So we're going to make sure that we're blocking all of those viruses that are coming in. With this anti-spam, it's set up very similar, where it's associated with the spam filter group, and then that group is associated with the message block service. So the message block is making sure that we're not delivering it to the end user. But then with the spam filter group, it's also configured to quarantine the item so that a copy of the message gets sent to the quarantine and can be reviewed either within a digest or by the system administrator. So with the wizard approach, everything's already set up for you compared to a manual filter policy. You can see that in this bottom section, there's nothing set up. So there's no actual tests or services that are going to be run if this policy is ever used. So that's why we always like the wizard approach, because it sets it up, and right out of the gate, you're going to be stopping spam and viruses and some of the known attachment and fingerprinting files.
Great. Wonderful. Good information. Let's see. Let's talk about DOS and DDoS protection. What does that do? And could you show us how to set that up?
Yeah, so with the DOS, with the denial service and the distributed denial service, that's one way that a lot of spammers and hackers are getting into systems to prevent message delivery from getting into the system. So we've built in some protection here, and it's part of the SMTP interface. So if you come into the module management interfaces and then the SMTP interface manager, you select the SMTP interface that you want to turn this on for. And right here in the menu, you can see there is a denial of service prevention that enable DOS functionality, and it's as simple as a checkbox. And what this is going to do is, if we see a certain number of connections from an IP address within a certain time frame, and we're going to make that determination to say, look, this IP address, they're hitting too often and with too many connections. So we're going to prevent that IP address from trying to deliver mail and tie up threads in the email system. So thus allowing other messages to come in undisturbed.
Great. Let's talk about multi-tenant support. Could you explain this to us and why it's important? And could you also touch on auto provisioning of new accounts?
Yeah, so with multi-tenant support, this is really useful if you're a partner to Micro Focus and you set up your own secure gateway system and you want to front end different organizations. So, if you're going to run in the partner program, if you're doing this as your own standalone, just my organization system, the multi-tenant support, not as useful, but within a partner or in the cloud infrastructure, it is very, very useful. What that does is that allows a partner or yourself to specify multiple organizations and then allow those organizations certain scanning rights or certain policies. So what we can do is here we have manage organizations. You can click new, and we're just going to give it some very basic information. We're going to make sure that the user interface availability. So this is as you log in, which interfaces that you'll see. The templates are notifications, digest, those things. We're going to make sure those are set. Exceptions. So make sure that this organization has available exceptions. Services. So actions that we take on filters. The event availability. These are the filters that we can run. And the roles, whether or not a certain organization has roles, OU supervisor, have access to message tracker, QMS, like those types of things. So we'll create a single OU, and for this purpose only, we're going to actually just clone this OU. And what that does is that copies all of the settings over from OU1 to OU2. Make sure to refresh this so you see OU1, OU2, and everything's checked just like it was before with OU1. So now that we have multiple organizations, I'm just going to collapse down the organization policy management, and you see two new folders. And these two folders are identical in the settings that they have, but you can see that OU1 has its own set of domains that it would manage, and then it in turn has its own set of policies that it can manage. OU2 doesn't see any of the domains for OU1 or any of the policies for the OU1. And each organization can have any defined domains. So the internet domains that we're going to route mail to, microfocus.com, GWAVA.com, whatever that it may be. But those domains can only exist once within a system. So that way it prevents any user from signing up within an organization and say, look, I want to create my own policies and do that. So the organizations are limited, or the domains are limited to an organization. So what this allows you to do, especially with the auto provisioning of new accounts, is as end users log in to manage their quarantine or things like that, these users will actually can be added to the list of managed users. So you can escalate rights for a user within an organization. And that's very useful in the multi-tenant support so that you don't have to spin up multiple servers just to manage multiple customers. You can have a single server and manage many, many customers.
Perfect. Thanks, Ben. It looks like there's a few questions from the attendees. Let's get to those really quick. The first one is there a direct migration tool from GWAVA 6?
Yes, there is. What you would do, you would deploy the new GWAVA 7 instance. It comes as an appliance. And what that means is that it comes as a OVA for VMware installations and as an ISO. So whether you use VMware or VirtualBox, Microsoft Hyper-V, or even just a standalone box itself. So you would deploy the GWAVA or the secure messaging gateway instance, and during the initial install wizard, there's a checkbox that says enable GWAVA 6 migration tools. So as long as you make sure that that box is checked, and after you initialize a default system, right under system management, up here at the top above managed servers, you'll have a new menu item that says GWAVA 6 migration. And then you click on that and it will launch a GWAVA 6 migration page. And it walks you right through the steps of what do you want to migrate, the policies you want to migrate, the end user whitelist, blacklist, and it prompts you through everything that will be migrated. The one thing that we don't migrate is the quarantine or the message tracker data, just because the GWAVA 6 and secure messaging gateway servers, they can run side by side. And that way you can naturally let your GWAVA 6 data phase out. And then once you feel that it's no longer relevant, you can just simply power off that machine.
So as a follow-up to that is, do policies carry over from GWAVA to Secure Messaging Gateway?
They do, yes.
Great.
So during the migration, you can actually set which of these policies do I want to migrate over.
Great. All right. And then as well, the other question follow-up there is will our current exceptions come over from GWAVA 6?
Yes, during the migration, that was definitely one of the prerequisites. Is I want to make sure all my exceptions are going to be migrated from 6 to Secure Messaging Gateway. So we've made it so anything that you've configured in GWAVA 6, that's going to be migrated over to the Secure Messaging Gateway policy. So your attachment, any spam settings, fingerprinting, exceptions, and user whitelist, blacklist. There are routes to make sure that all of those come over.
Great. Awesome. Okay, so back to the DOS and DDoS protection. Question is, we have group message lists that sends out email messages to hundreds of users at a time, and then we get replies from those users. Will DOS prevent these types of messages?
It should not. There should be some controls over that. So I've not seen that issue arise with those types of services.
Great. And then a question is if we could do a webinar on migrating from GWAVA 6 to 7. That's something we could look at doing. Yeah, okay. Good questions. Thanks, everyone. Great participation. This is really good. If you have further questions, feel free to put those through. Let's get back to the other questions that we kind of have here. Another one is, could you touch on the new multi-threaded high-performance scanning?
Yeah. So with GWAVA 6, if you're familiar with it at all, it was a serial level testing. So as a message came in, we went through one by one and did tests. With the secure messaging gateway, we still have that option, but like Q was saying, that we have this multi-threaded scanning option. And what that does is that allows, as a message comes in, the SMTP interface will pass the message over to the scan engine, and it will say, scan this message. And the scan engine, rather than going one by one and doing the test serially, it will say, do all the tests at the same time. That way, especially in a multi-threaded or a multi-core machine, we can take advantage of multiple cores and make sure that the load is spread across each of those cores, and we can scan messages that much faster. So it's a simple, by default, this box is checked to make sure that we're running as optimal as possible. But if for debug purposes or for support purposes that you wanted to run the test serially, you just uncheck the box and we can go about that. So really makes it nice for speed purposes.
Great. Another one is, could you talk about the scalable design of Secure Messaging Gateway?
Yeah. So as you can see in the specifically in the or any of the modules here, SMTP interface, you can see that the add new button is always here. So you're always able to add new interfaces as you go along. One thing to keep in mind here is anytime you add a new interface, what you have to do is you have to make sure that this interface is assigned to a specific server. So what we've done in the past is as you install GWAVA 7, there's an option during the initial wizard to say, or sorry, Secure Messaging Gateway Server. As you install it, there's an option to say, this is a standalone server or this is a new server, or I want to add this into an existing multi-server deployment for Secure Messaging Gateway. So with interfaces, or even with the scan engines, we want to say, I want to add a new SMTP interface and I want to associate it with this server. And you could do a stats module if you want. We can also, we'll just do a bunch of these. And we hit save. Now we have 4 SMTP interfaces on this one machine. Not really an ideal way to do it, but if you had a multi-server deployment, it would make a lot of sense because then you could manage all these different interfaces within a single interface. And the same thing would go with the message scan engine. Typically what we would like to do is as you add a new server to this network, you would associate both an SMTP interface and a scan engine to this new server. We'll say new REST and be on this server. And this way, to help facilitate with load balancing or fault tolerance, everything's built into this one management UI, but the load would be spread across multiple servers. One thing we can show you this. Different web page here. So this server, this test server I have, it's got, if you come to manage servers here, you can see that this server has 3 servers in the mix. So as more servers are added to the list, it's very easy to add them in. And you can manage each of them from this one location. Then what you do is make sure the SMTP interface is here. So here's a host server for this interface. This interface is using a different server. And we've done the same thing here for the scan engines where this one is associated with this server and this one is associated with this server. And what you do is then go to the module status page and you can see that the status for each of the services is broken up per server, and then you can see all of the different services running per server. So very easy to deploy new servers into the mix or even take them out as needed. And then if you needed additional services per server, it's very easy to install those and get them up and running. You can see on this module status, it's kind of goofy the way it's set up, but for demo purposes, that's why we did that. So whether you want to add 1, 2, 300 servers to a system, it's very easy to do and get it up and running in a matter of minutes.
Great. Let's see, there's a couple more questions that came through. Back to migration. Are you able to migrate from GWAVA 6 on the same machine /VM?
We've had that request a lot. So the way we've done the secure messaging gateway as an appliance, there is not an in-place upgrade path to secure messaging gateway. We've migrated to an all new architecture. We're making sure that all the programs are 64-bit, whereas the old appliance was 32-bit. So there is not a current in-place upgrade path.
Okay. And then what databases are used out of the box or supported?
So by default, we are using Postgres, and that is the only supported database currently on our list. So Postgres, at least the minimum is 9.5.
Great. And then another question is RC GWAVAman command line still supported?
Not currently, just where it is the new architecture. What we're hoping is once you get the secure messaging gateway here, that you shouldn't have to be going to the command line. We hope that as you can see here on the module status page, there's a restart all, stop all, start all. The hope is if you need to restart services, that you just come to this page and you can restart the services and you won't be needing to go to the command line and do anything there. But there is still a stop start on the appliance. It's not the RC GWAVAman script anymore.
Great. And then another one that came through is let's see. So the single license will cover multiple physical or virtual servers. Is that in that last example you just performed?
That is correct. So a single license will handle or support multiple servers. The licensing will still be based on the number of mailboxes that your organization has purchased.
Great. Uh, let's see. And then is Postgres database installed by default with Guava 7?
With the appliance, yes, everything that we expect to be able to install and deploy a new machine, everything is set up, ready out of the box, ready for you to go. Or if you had your own Postgres server or wanted to deploy your own Postgres instance, that's totally up to you. But with the appliance, it is fully up and running, ready to go.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Thanks everyone again for your questions. Let's go on to uh, domain keys identified mail verification. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so we've had a request for a long time to be able to support DKIM. DKIM is a method of proving that or signing a message and saying this based on the sender or the subject, the sender, the to, and I believe there's a couple other header fields that you use to sign a message. So within uh, Secure Messaging Gateway, we can do DKIM verification. And shortly, in the next update that we'll have DKIM signing capabilities as well. So with DKIM, I would just come here to the policy. With DKIM, it works very similar to SPF and just in a way of validating that a message came from or was authorized from a certain sender. So the way that we'd like to set it up, um, we don't typically like to apply to all email domains because not everybody sets up uh, DKIM. So what we do is we set up an email address filter. Now just keep in mind that filters don't actually do anything. They have to be associated with a service. The service is block or quarantine, anything like that. The filter just says, do this test and see if I get a match. So we're going to say startdomain.com. And then what we want to do is we can take this little middle icon that we can say now link another filter based on this. So what we want to do is we do DKIM verification. And then what we want to do is if it's from this domain and it doesn't, and the DKIM doesn't pass, then we want to do the block service. Now setting this up is a little bit backwards because the DKIM verification filter does the test to verify that it was successful. Now if the test DKIM verification passed, we don't want to block the message, we want to let it through. So what we want to do instead is we need to invert the node logic. What that says is if we do the DKIM verification for this domain and the DKIM verification fails, then we want to block the message. And one other thing that we want to make sure is we want to make sure that this checkbox is checked, this run children if activated, because we want to make sure if it's from a certain email address, then we do the verification, and if the verification fails, then we block the message. So this is the recommended way for setting up the DKIM verification to verify. That really useful in your domain. If you know that you're signing all of your messages with DKIM, then you can put in that email address filter star@mydomain.com and set it up just like this. This way you know that if a message comes in and it fails that DKIM verification, that you're going to block the message. So very similar to SPF, but it takes that one extra step just above SPF.
Great. Okay. I understand Secure Messaging Gateway features updates to the system on the last Thursday of each month. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, so what we've done with Secure Messaging Gateway is we want to make sure that we're getting updates pushed out quickly and as fast as possible, so that we can adapt and react to situations that are happening in the world. As spammers don't care about the SMTP protocol or if they break it, but we want to make sure that we're adapting and able to react as quickly as possible. So we've decided that our online updates happen every month, and we do them on the last Thursday of every month. As you can tell, that today is the last Thursday of the month. So anytime you can come here to the online update page and click view updates. What it does is we go and we pull down the change notice or the log to see what the current version is. And you can see right here, revision 300 created 28 September 2017. That's obviously today. So we have pushed out the update today. Now we lapsed last month, but we were waiting on some things. But you can see as you scroll down, you can see all of the release notes for the prior releases. 27 July, 29 June, 25 May, 27 April. You can see that there's a consistent pattern of having a new update at the end of every month. And we will continue doing that as we go forward. You can also see here in the beta tag or the beta tab that as we put out beta updates, you can see the change log or the release notes for the beta that we currently have out there as well. So if you wanted to try out the beta, you can see if there's anything in there that you've been waiting on. You can come in here and see the beta. The beta, there's no set timetable for when we push out betas. It's just as features are developed, tested, verified, we push them out. So those can come. We hope to have a new beta out tomorrow, even though we just had a release today. We're hoping to have a beta out tomorrow that will do the DKIM signing of messages. So and again, the updates are not automatic. That you still have to manually trigger the update process. We're not going to be automatically applying updates to your system. That is still fully under the control of the administrator to do that.
Great. Okay. What about easy to create filter combinations and features? I understand you can group filters and features. What can be grouped and how is it done?
Yeah. So let's go back down to this DKIM filter. Again, the policy name doesn't really mean anything. It's the name that you give it. So we'll just gonna delete these ones and do this. So the filters, these are all the different tests that we run. So first, let's talk the content filtering or filter combinations. That's what we're doing, not content. So what we do is we have a filter group filter. Now the filter group doesn't actually run any tests. It just says I'm a collection of filters. And then what you can do is you can say, well, I'm gonna take this little green one, drop it off into the white space. All right, what are the different filters that I want to do? Well, I want to say, message size is this. So that's one way that you can associate a filter to a filter group. The other way you can do is you can come down up to the filter list at the top and say, let's take the serval, and I'm going to drag it down here. Now the serval, it's not currently associated with the filter group. What you do is take the little node here next to serval, you drag it anywhere onto this filter group box, and now it's linked up to that filter group. And you can do as many combinations that you want and all associated with it. Now, keep in mind that this isn't actually doing anything if these services are activated. It's only running those tests. If you wanted to make sure that you did something, you take the top one, which is the services, and you say, I want to block the message. So this filter group will run the test message size and serval. If either of them match, then block the message. So one of the things, so if you wanted to make sure to do it that way, or you hit the drop down here on the filter group, then you can hit this secondary drop down, and you can say, any of the child events fire, a number of them, percentages, or all the child events. So with your filter groups, you can do a lot of customization to say, two of the three things have to fire in order for me to block, or all of them have to fire in order to block. So it allows you to be very specific in your policies to say what you want to do, and that's completely under your control at any time. So again, GWAVA 6 didn't have this filter capability. GWAVA 6 was very much a do one test. If it activates, block and quarantine, or just block, or do whatever you want. With this filter group, this allows you to say, run all of these tests, but I need to have a 40% trigger rate in order for me to say I need to block this message or do a notification or something like that. So filter groups allow you to really customize your system.
Great. And speaking of filtering, what is envelope filtering?
So envelope filtering, what we do is we'll trigger this one on the filter group, and you can see here, let's see, SMTP envelope. With any of the filters, you just click on the icon and a customized window will pop up. And then with the SMTP envelope, there's a few tests that you can see. So client is authenticated, so using auth login or some type of the supported authentication mechanism, you can test, did this particular message come in through an authenticated source? Was the secure connection used with SSL? Or did the client switch to SSL using start TLS? The way you would, you'd set this up, you click OK, hit save. Then as messages come in and you are running this SMTP envelope test, you would be able to say, or do some type of service on, especially say this SMTP envelope. You could say, look, this message didn't come in via start TLS. So, you could do tag the message, append the subject to say, hey, not secure. And so your users know that this message wasn't secure as it was transmitted across the wire. So another test that you can do there, but allows you to manipulate or notify your users into making sure that they know that messages were secure.
Great. Let's see. Now, still on filtering, what about directional filtering control? What is that?
So directional. So one thing we can do is come back to the policy management, and under your policies, you have your scanning direction. So if it's inbound mail, then use this set of policies. If it's outbound mail, then, well, we don't want to do our spam test, but we want to, we want to make sure that we're blocking certain attachments from going out. So you can have different policies for an inbound policy or an outbound policy. And even with an outbound policy, you can have an outbound policy where if the recipient domain is a certain domain, you can use a custom policy when sending to that email domain. So if you had a partner that you were emailing and you wanted to make sure that no attachments were getting blocked, so two ways is to use the default outbound policy, but then customize that outbound policy and create exceptions, or you can come in here and create an outbound policy for domain X and not even do the fingerprinting or the attachment tests. And so we're just letting the message go through. And you could do that simply by coming here and saying, match the address list. So, star@domainx.com. So if that's in the recipient list and the direction is outbound, then, use this policy, and that policy would then say what the tests are that are going to be used.
Great. Okay. There's a few other questions from the attendees here. One is, can we run GWAVA 6 and GWAVA 7 in tandem to make sure the new server is functioning properly?
Absolutely. So obviously each machine is going to have their own IP address. So if you have multiple public IP addresses um, available to you, you could have multiple MX records. So you could have GWAVA 6 MX record and a GWAVA or a secure messaging gateway MX record. So you can have those run side by side, or if your firewall can kind of do a round robin to say, go here, go to GWAVA 6, then go SM secure messaging gateway, go back and forth. Yeah, they can easily run in tandem side by side. The one thing to note is that they don't talk to each other. So they just are seen as two completely independent and isolated machines.
Great. Looks like there's a question about disk space. It says your previous appliance didn't give enough disk space, so I had to install a new SUSE Linux server and give it a 100 gig disk, which took care of the problem. How do you handle creating disk space in the appliance?
So with the OVA, we have it with 2 disks. It puts all the data on the secondary disk. Those disks can be easily expanded with the root partition. We haven't seen a need to increase the disk space on that partition, but in the data partition, it is you can easily do that. The other option with the appliance, if you didn't want to go the OVA route, there is an ISO route so that you can predefine the size of disk that is going to be used. The one thing to note on the ISO route is that is just one partition. And so if you set that to be 100 gigs, then both the root and the data partition are going to be on or the data volume are going to be on a single partition. Doesn't prevent you from adding another disk down the road, but that is something to be aware of. And even with the ISO, back to the Postgres, with the ISO, Postgres is fully configured and ready to go on the ISO.
Great. And then along those same lines, do we have to use the appliance or can we install it on say, a SUSE Linux server?
Right now, the secure messaging gateway is only supported as an appliance. This way, we're making sure that the operating system that it's running on is fully supported, and we're not running into issues where if we don't know the exact service pack level that you're running on. So we want to, currently it is only as an appliance.
Great. And if your GWAVA maintenance is current, are you entitled to the secure messaging gateway?
Yes, we made sure that if your maintenance is current, then you are absolutely entitled to the upgrade to secure messaging gateway.
Okay, great. And then what's the suggested disk size?
You know, that one's hard because it's fully dependent on what your policy is. If you get a lot of mail scanning, um, or if you have a lot of mail flow through your system, that's one thing. Um, but if you're quarantining a lot, especially if you're quarantining a lot of attachments, it's always hard to give a good recommendation of the disk space that will be needed for your system. It can always be changed after the fact, especially with growing a partition, as long as you're familiar with that. But you know, if your organization is consistently quarantining 50 megabyte attachments, that you're going to want obviously a much bigger disk space than versus somebody that's only quarantining spam and the occasional attachment. So
Great. Okay, looks like we have time for a few more. One thing that was asked is email keyword scanning or content filtering. Could you go over that for us? What it was used for, how we'd set it up?
yeah, so with the content filtering, down here in your workbench, what you can do is you can come in and you look for the message text. filter, I'll just drag this down here. And with the message text filter, so here you can do the 4 different areas that we can look at a message: the body, subject, header, and the source file. The source file would be the uh, undecoded MIME file that's sent over the wire. So uh, images will be in ASCII format. So it's not, whether or not you want to do that, that's fine. So what you can do is in this text filter, and you can create multiple filters of this same type. You're not limited to just one type. It will prompt you, say, hey, there's already one here. Are you sure you want to add another one? You can say yes. And then you can come in here and say, well, this one, I'm going to say, look in the body and look for this word in the body here. Click OK. And one thing you do to make sure that these are easily distinguished is any of these filters, services, or exceptions can be renamed to anything you want. You just click on the name and it should open up and allow you to type in there. And then you can come in here and customize this however you want. One thing to note is anytime we have the big search criteria boxes you have in here, we do support regular expression. So you can put regex phrases in here or certain regex keys or things you want to put in here so you can block based on those findings. So whether it's just normal text-based searching or regular expression, we support them both.
Okay, great. A couple other questions here is how about interaction with Redline?
Right now, I am not aware of any integration with Redline at this time.
Okay, and then what about localization to German?
So localization, that's something that we are aware of, and we do want to make sure it is done and is done properly. So we're still waiting on the go ahead to move forward with localization. One thing that you can do is in the templates, any of the templates here you can customize as much as you want. I would recommend not modifying these existing ones, because as we make updates to the system, we do update these default ones. But you can download the current digest and then translate it to any language that you like, and then you can create new templates. So if you wanted to have a German digest or a Spanish digest or something like that, then that's definitely something that you are able to do. We do hope to be able to support, German, Spanish, some of those other more common languages that for people to use.
Great. And it looks like that's all the questions we have. If you have any other questions, feel free to put those through and we will get to those. One question that did come through is if this will be recorded. Yes, it will be recorded and available for viewing. You should see an email soon with that webinar recording. So that looks like all that we have for now. Oh, here's another one that came through is can we put our own logo into the UI?
I don't see why not. We haven't fully exposed the UI option to do that, but everything is here in standardized PHP. So if you are familiar with the PHP and putting in logos and HTML and those types of files, then I don't see why you can't do that. One thing just to be aware of is that if you do that, the way that we do updates, we do overwrite any files that we change. So if you made a change to a file and then a month down the road we make a change to that same file, your change will be overwritten. But one thing that we can help with that is this user interfaces. These are the default ones that are in here. you might be able to create a new user interface and use all of the same default setting user interface that's here, but then um, use your own logos and things like that. But that's not something that we've fully um, documented on how to do.
Great. And it looks like I had missed a question earlier on. David, if you could clarify, because I'm not sure exactly the example, because the question is, so the single license will cover multiple physical or virtual servers in that last example you just performed? I don't know if you remember which one that was, Ben. It was a while ago.
Well, yeah, so with the single license, so it doesn't really matter how many servers that you deploy here. Your single license will support as many servers, whether they be virtual or physical servers. A single license will support that because we're not licensing based on server, we're licensing based on user counts.
Perfect. Yeah, he did say creating multiple servers for load balancing. So yeah, perfect. And then looks like we had one here about WebAccess and GroupWise mobility scanning.
Yeah, so we are working hand in hand with the GroupWise development team to support both GroupWise WebAccess and GroupWise Mobility Server in Secure Messaging Gateway um, when GroupWise 18 ships. So, you know, I believe they're hoping November, December timeframe. Um, don't quote me on that, but when they do ship that, we do plan on being able to support both WebAccess and GroupWise Mobility Service when GroupWise 18 ships.
Perfect. All right. Okay, that looks like all the questions. Thanks everyone for your time, and thanks Ben for the information. Great information. And just once again, as a reminder, this will be recorded for you to review later on. And thanks again, and everybody, once again, everybody who's current on their current maintenance will be eligible for this latest release, and I encourage you to take advantage of it and download it and start using it today. Thanks again, everyone, and hope to see you on the next one.